Hello friend, how are you doing today? My name is Mary, this is Happilyeveresch, and today we are doing one of the most exciting videos on BookTube, and that is Best Books of the Year. This is some of my favorite time of year on BookTube. I love seeing everyone's videos coming out and just highlighting the best of the best. I think it's so much fun and I'm excited to add mine to the mix. So these are my top books from 2020. Kind of a 2020 in review wrap up where I talk a little stats and all of the books that I read. I read 68 books this year, which is a pretty decent number. It's one of the biggest numbers I've had in the last couple years, so that's super exciting. I was hoping it was going to be a little more, but don't we always hope that we could read more? I'm going to highlight 7 books here. That's about 10%, which is where I like to keep it. I read so many fabulous books this year, so many impactful books. I highlight some more of those in my book superlatives tag video that I did. I will put it down in the description box below, so if you want to kind of get a little more flavor of some books that I really enjoyed, but these are the best of the best. I think these are all well written, wonderful storytelling, great looks at characters. They kind of just hit all of the marks for me. So let's go, let's just get into it. These are the best books I read in 2020. I am gonna try to work my way up to the best, though honestly, besides my #1 spot, ask me on a different day and maybe these would be interchanged, who knows. For spot 7, I'm actually doing this as more of an author than a book because I read 2 books by this author this year, and I think if had I just read one, they might not have broken into my top tier, but because I think that I just love this author's writing, that they are consistently good, at least in my small sample size, and I think that this author is going to be a favorite, I had to put them in this spot. The author is Patchett. The first book I read this year by her was Commonwealth, and then I picked up her new release, which was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, and it's The Dutch House by Patchett. So this came out this year or in 2019. It was a pretty new release, but these are actually both of her newest books and I enjoyed them both. They're both fabulous character studies. They really dive into kind of the psyche of her characters. She really explores family dynamic in a really interesting way. I also think from reading both of these, she explores place in a really interesting way. I listened to both of these on audiobook and they were fabulous. They translated so well to audio, and while she is kind of a more slower contemplative writer, I still just was so involved in these characters. I had to know what was going to happen. They both are super unique in their own way. This book we're following 2 families, and in the very first chapter there is an illicit kiss that kind of reverberates through these families' lives for the next decades. And in this, we're following a brother and a sister, and they're kind of, and how their lives are tied up in this immaculate, huge house. And there's really very light fairy tale vibes in this. It kind of reminds me of a modern day Hansel and Gretel story. So yes, she's fabulous. I can't wait to read more of her in 2021, and I'm so glad that I discovered her this year. In my next spot, I kind of also have a series, but definitely my favorite book from the series that I read was Wondersmith. This is by Jessica Townsend. I read Nevermore a couple years ago and I enjoyed it. I was looking forward to continue on, but Wondersmith really sucked me in and made me fall in love with the series, and then equally, I thought Hollow Pox was fabulous. This is a middle grade series and we're following young Morrigan Crow. We kind of have chosen special child elements, a magical school setting. We have a hotel and this cast of characters that kind of make a found family in this hotel. There's magical creatures, there's good versus evil. So while there are some of these really fun tropes, it really is still its own unique thing, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm so excited that I'm caught up in this series, and hopefully every year I'll have something to look forward to as these books come out. I would say that if you've read Nevermore and you're kind of on the fence of continuing with the series, please do. I think these books are just going to get better and better and better. I'm really excited to see how she deals with the evil character in this, because in the 3rd book it kind of seems like she's maybe going to take an interesting twist on it. I can't wait to have more joy in this series for years to come, and Wondersmith really just stole my heart this year. The audiobooks are phenomenal. I highly recommend this series and definitely was a highlight of my 2020 year. Spot number 5, I have There, There by Tommy Orange. Another fabulous audiobook. There, There follows a large cast of characters, but they all share that they're of Native descent, and kind of the crux of this story is a powwow that's being prepared for in Oakland, California, and all of these individuals are drawn together through this powwow. There is such beautiful everyday storytelling about the individual lives, but also there is this huge, sweeping, epic plot line that also is like connecting all of these stories. While you just spend a little time with each character, I truly felt like I knew who they were. Tommy Orange just crafts such intricate characters. He did such a fabulous job of like making them all individuals who have different thoughts, feelings, and emotions. They just felt so real. But then he also is really digging into historical trauma and like the lasting effects of the colonization of America, essentially. This was a masterpiece. It was so phenomenally written. It was a compelling story and I just got sucked in. But also like just the themes and things that will stick with me like for the rest of my life. But also, while it's so hard and heavy, there's like this glimmer of hope in it as well. It was so good. It was everything I want a book to be. I think that he's a talent. I hope he writes for years to come because I think his voice is a huge addition to the literary community. And I just feel lucky that I get to read him. Phenomenal book. It's gotten a lot of hype for a couple years and I think it's well deserved. And the audiobook was phenomenal. I read it both physically and kind of went back and forth between the physical book and the audiobook. But every time I read the audiobook, it was such a treat because all of the different characters are narrated by someone else, and it was just phenomenally done. I loved that book, and I'm so glad that I read it this year. In spot number 4, we have another literary fiction, and that's Ask Again Yes by Mary Beth Keane. Again, it's a family story where we have two families brought together by one event and how they affect each other for the rest of their lives. This book deals very heavily with mental health issues, with family dynamics. It's really heavy at times. I think I felt this book the most viscerally out of anything that I read. My heart was often very heavy for these characters. But again, the author just gave us a glimmer of hope in the end, and I so appreciated it. It felt so real. The characters felt like they could have actually been going through and dealing with these things, and I was just with them along for the ride. It has themes of family and of forgiveness. It really explores the parent-child relationship. I just thought that this book was phenomenally written, so emotional, but also offered that glimmer of hope that I often need in my reads to love them. And so heavy and beautiful, and I hope that Mary Beth Keane writes more because I loved this wonderful multi-generational family story. A little like twinge of historical fiction at the beginning. It was great. I loved it. Spot number 3, we have Our Souls at Night by Kent Haruf. This is a sparse, short little novel that utterly captured my heart. We're following two elderly people who decide that they are going to spend their nights together to stave off loneliness. It's about their friendship. It's about how they affect each other and the people in their lives. It's about what we hold on to create an authentic life for us, like what's worth holding on to and what's not. It was heart-wrenching and shattered me into a million little pieces. The companionship in this was like palpable. I loved this. Kent Haruf writes deceptively simple stories that always find a way to like me open and just like expose me emotionally. I don't know. This was phenomenal. I think that he's probably going to be a favorite author for me. I read Plain Song last year and it was a top book. Just pretty fabulous. He also wrote this book while he was dying, essentially. He was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and this is like his last work. And I think the rawness of the emotion that you feel when you read this reflects where he was in his life when he read it. And I just feel so like privilege that I got to read what he produced in that time. Phenomenal book. The cover, just like so melancholy and like nostalgic. It just all of the things that he captures in his work. I loved this book. Spot number 2 is another duo, and that is The War That Saved My Life. I don't know if you call it a duology. The second book was The War I Finally Won, and these are middle grade stories written by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. These stories are set in World War II, and we follow a young girl named Ada and her brother who go to live in the countryside of England when London is being threatened by bombs during World War II. This book is so phenomenal. Kimberly Brubaker Bradley explores childhood trauma and the effects of it in such a wonderful way. She makes you empathize with the character while also not shying away from the hard things that childhood trauma causes, like behaviorally. I work with children who are in the foster care system. That's been my job for the past 3 years. And so while I'm by no means an expert, I do deal with and talk about childhood trauma all the time because it's just so like a part of my job. And I would recommend this to foster parents. I would recommend this to children who have been through it. It might be a little triggering, but maybe for kids who are ready, because again, like the way that she explores it just is so authentically real and good. I know that her new release is also about childhood trauma and abuse, and I can't wait to read it because I think she deals with the topics phenomenally. And not to mention there's like found family aspects. There's also her relationship with an animal, a horse in this, and it's so beautiful. I read this one physically and I listened to the second book on audio. Both formats phenomenal. Kimberly Brubaker Bradley could probably be a favorite middle grade author. I'm going to seek out more work from her in 2021. I loved this one, lived up to the hype 1,000%. For young and old alike, this book, this duology series is phenomenal, and I'm so glad I finally read it this year. And then last, but certainly not least, you might be able to guess if you've spent any time on this channel, but it's Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward. This book, phenomenal. I can't like explain how good this book was. Compellingly written, I zoomed through it, beautiful writing. The family dynamics in this are just phenomenal. One of my favorite relationships that I've ever read about between a grandfather and a grandson. This book has magical realism elements. I don't even like magical realism most of the time, but it was so rooted in reality and the historical trauma that it just was so good. It deals with race. It deals, like I said, with historical trauma and family trauma. It deals with family dynamics. It was so good. Like, I feel like these people exist somewhere in the world because she draws her characters so realistically and wonderfully. And it was just like point blank, compellingly told and compellingly written. I loved this book. I don't have much more to say about that than I loved it. It was so hard, but again, there's that glimmer of hope, which I guess you could probably tell I need a little bit of hope in my books. And she doesn't shy away from the hard things. The hard things are there, but there still is like a glimmer of hope in this book. And it was so good. It was so good. I loved it. So glad I read it in 2020. So thankful for book club for picking this book because it probably would have sat on my shelf for way too long had they not. And I just hope I get to read a book in 2021 as good as this one. All right, friends, that's it. There you have it, my top books of 2020. I'd love to know if you were surprised by any of these, if you share any of my favorite books. I'd love to know what your top book from the year was. Was it hard to choose, or were you like pretty certain of what it was like me? I'd love to chat all of that and more down below. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video. If you have been a subscriber to my channel, I just appreciate you so much and just kind of wanted to take some time to say that. I know I have done booktube on and off for the last couple years, but I'm just so appreciative of anyone who's liked or commented and just helped like make a bookish community here. I'm just so appreciative. So all right, with that, I will talk to you very soon with another bookish video. Happy 2021. Here's hoping that we read lots of wonderful books this year. I'll talk to you later, friends. Bye.